Mason Ginsburg writes for Bourbon Street Shots. He also does an excellent podcast, by the way, in the NO. Get it? NO, New Orleans in the Know.
Oh.
Right? You see that? He joins us right now, bright and early. It's just, I believe, 8:05 in New Orleans, so he's an early riser, too. And I'm sure his ears have been burning from everybody wanting to get him on. Because, honestly, and we've talked about this before, the people that cover the Pelicans in that area are saints. And I don't mean the pun, but I'll allow
the football team. Stupid.
I'll allow the pun. There's not exactly giant budgets for Pelican coverage, but I expect that's going to change perhaps here. Because I think this team's going to be a lot better than it was. And Mason Ginsburg joins us right now. Mason, it is Dave, that is Kyle, that is Jay. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Doing pretty well. And actually, I'm based out of Chicago at this point in my life, but I spent the first 25 years of my life in New Orleans, and I'm very closely tied to that city still. Parents still live there, and you're pretty spot on in the fact that it's a Saints town. But I think the shift towards everyone's really rallying behind that number one pick for Zion, and now that the AD trade has happened, we can finally move on to the next era.
I will avoid every bone in my body wanting to sit here and just wax poetic about the city of New Orleans with you for the next 10 minutes, because you could.
He would do that.
I would absolutely. It's my favorite city other than my hometown of Sacramento. It's my favorite city in America. And those, is there a day, Mason, do you think, is there a day that could come where the Pelicans are never going to overtake the Saints? I think we know that. But could we see some sort of, I don't know, Torontonian renaissance if the Pelicans truly contended for a title, where they'd be a really big deal there?
Without a doubt, because if there's one thing the city knows how to do, it's throw a party. And so I think that, we got to get there first. And I think the right foundation is finally in place. So Gail Benson took over the team for her late husband, Tom, a little over a year and a half ago. And she's really done every single thing right since the AD trade request broke. Obviously hired David Griffin, who handled the trade masterfully. And I really think this team's got a strong foundation for success, which I really don't know if you could have ever said that dating back to even when the team first moved to New Orleans. I mean, the George Shinn years were not great. Then the NBA owned the team, and then Tom Benson bought them, which was a huge sigh of relief, because there were attendance benchmarks the team needed to meet, and now you've got Tom. But Tom's the Pelicans were almost his third priority behind the Saints and his horses for horse racing. Gail has shown that that's not the case for her. She really values this team, and she's put money where her mouth is.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the timing of the Davis trade a little bit. Is this a scenario where, like you said, they just needed to move on and get this done with? Is this the best time they were gonna? Is this the best timing wise for? Hang on, I got this.
You're going to get
Wait
it. Hold
for
on.
it.
We're
Hang
waiting.
on.
I think I know where you're going with this.
It's still early.
Yeah.
It's still early.
I want you to get it right.
Was this the best timing for the trade, or could they have maybe had Zion and Anthony Davis play next to each other for a while, see maybe if he changed his mind about staying in New Orleans, or was this the best package they were going to get?
Yeah, I think that the ship had sailed with AD. I think, honestly, it just seemed like he wanted to end the discomfort and the awkwardness. And I think it would have been really, really great to see that potential of those two guys together. But that coupled with the fact that Griffin, when the day he took the job, when he was asked about AD, he said, you're either all in or you're all out. And I think that he meant those words. And so regarding the timing of the trade itself, it's funny because Schmidt and I, he's a podcast co-host, we recorded on Thursday. And I think we were starting to believe this trade was going to stretch out to free agency, because with the situation with Kyrie and the Celtics, you have to stretch the market, see if there's any other teams that, if they miss in free agency, come to go get AD, especially with the injuries to Clay and KD. It really opens up next year. But I think Griffin squeezed so much out of Pelinka and the Lakers that there was no way he couldn't take this deal. And the timing was obviously a huge factor for the Lakers as well.
Mason Ginsburg, hello. He hosts the Indie NO podcast. Mason, I have to ask, the Pelicans got quite the poo-poo platter back of assets. If you had to power rank those assets, you don't have to do every single one of them, but which one should the Pelicans fans be most excited about?
It's hard, but it's probably the ones that are furthest out. I think I'm a little bit higher on Lonzo Ball than most, and I'm probably a little bit lower on Brandon Ingram than most. But I mean, the number 4 pick's obviously great. It's a weaker draft, but a top 5 pick in any draft usually has pretty decent returns. But I mean, those picks later on. So they've got a 2021 pick only if it's top 8, and then it goes unprotected in 2022. which I think is LeBron's last year if he takes his option. But then they've got a pick swap rights in 2023, and then unprotected 2024 unless they choose to defer it one more year, in which case they get 2025. So, I mean, there are these picks later on, and the Lakers are always going to be a great market and a hot free agent market, as we've seen, no matter how competent or strong the management structure in place is. But I still think that's something that you've got to take a gamble on. The org has not done things the right way, I'd say, overall over the last few years. I'm not saying you bet on incompetence, but I think those are, even if you don't see those assets all the way through, they're trade chips that you can move for other pieces if you want to expedite the Zion timeline. So I think it's just the overall package. It's hard to nail one exact pick as the staple, but it's overall I think it was too much for Griff to pass up.
I might miss my mark here, Mason, but judging by what I'm hearing out of New Orleans, usually when a franchise trades a franchise player, the GM and the team are blamed, and whatever the haul is, again, historically, Jay mentioned the poo-poo platter. We've heard that term before. Generally, the star that gets traded, it doesn't matter how many guys come back, it's still all about the star that's traded in the future. In this case, I don't know how David Griffin could have done better. The haul is insane. The Pelicans are basically practically drafting for two teams, plus they have Zion Williamson coming in. I'm guessing the feel in New Orleans is sucks about Anthony Davis, but they've got to be pretty pleased with David Griffin and what the franchise did.
Yeah, everyone's very, very excited, and honestly, it's so. I've been talking about this for weeks now, but it's crazy how AD so easily could have, and this probably wasn't in his interest to do so, but he didn't have to be the bad guy in all of this.
Right.
The fans all really understood why when he requested his trade. They kind of got it. I mean, they realized they didn't put a contender around him for the 7 years he was there, and they said, all right, you know what, that's fine. I think when he started trying to force his way to the Lakers and Clutch got involved and Rich Paul, I think that's when he started really quickly burning some bridges. But yeah, I mean, I think, like to your point, everyone's really excited to just move on, and obviously you've got a great foundational building block in Zion who helps expedite things. But yeah, it's just it was a time to move on.
Do you think the Pelicans can make the playoffs next year, just kind of based on what they have and what they might be able to go get in free agency?
That's a great question. I wish I knew the answer. It obviously depends on how quickly Zion acclimates to the NBA, and I think his skill set and talent level is one that will acclimate quicker than most number one picks. But that said, I mean, they still are entertaining trades for that 4 pick. It could be a situation where they trade down for 8 and 10 from the Hawks and maybe something else as well. Or they go and get one later pick and then one player alongside it. So I think that this roster is not in its final form, even disregarding free agency for a second. I mean, I think there could be a trade or two left this summer to really round out the roster. But I think Griff is a great guy to have leading that charge because he's not going to just think short term; he'll think long term as well.
Mason Ginsburg writes for Bourbon Street Shots, covers the Pelicans. You can hear his podcast as well, In the NO. You get it, In the NO, like New Orleans. That's an awesome pun. We are a huge fan.
It's like In the Know.
Yeah, very huge fans of that. Mason, I'm sure you're going to be very busy over the next few days. Oh, last thing. We can't leave you without asking this. Randall gone? Julius Randle declares free agency. Is that it?
Yeah, I think so. There was a good case to keep him before the Zion pick landed and the Pelicans lapsed on something maybe more short term. But yeah, I can't see the Pelicans bringing him back.
All right. Appreciate your time, buddy. Thank you so much.
You're listening to The Drive.